The DNR form had my name, misspelled, and my son's signature. I was in the ICU, alive. He'd filed me as dead. My daughter-in-law posted a tribute slideshow titled, "Rest Easy, Evelyn." My niece grieved. My house was for sale. They thought being family meant having control. I commented under the video, "Still breathing. Thanks for the eulogy." All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The nurse said, "You've got visitors." But the flowers weren't from my family, and the card said, "You'll always be remembered." The first thing Evelyn Harper saw was blue. Not sky blue, not the comforting blue of a blanket or a nurse's scrubs, but the deep navy silk ribbon wound around a bouquet of white lilies and roses, arranged like a funeral display, the kind you didn't send to the living. A nurse's voice floated above her as her senses returned. "Someone left flowers for you, Miss Harper. Beautiful, aren't they?" She placed the arrangement on the side table with gentle ceremony, unaware of the message wrapped inside. Evelyn blinked slowly, her body still aching from the cardiac event that had dragged her into the ICU 3 nights earlier. Her hand moved with effort toward the attached card, thick parchment, gold edges, elegant script in neat cursive. "With love and light, you'll always be remembered. Trina Harper." Evelyn stared, the words blurred at the edges of her vision, not from weakness, but from disbelief. Her daughter-in-law, the one with the rehearsed smile and soft threats, the one who'd started answering for Evelyn months ago, the one who now thought she was dead. She looked around. No balloons, no get-well cards, no sign of her son Kyle, just the low beep of machines and the hush of a ward where no one came to visit. "Nurse," she rasped, voice dry as dust. "Have my family been here?" The young woman gave her a sympathetic smile. "Actually, your file was marked no visitors since check-in. We assumed you wanted privacy." "No visitors?" Evelyn frowned, fingers tightening on the card. "Who made that note?" The nurse tilted her head. "I believe your power of attorney signed off during intake. Trina Harper, right?" The room felt suddenly colder. Evelyn stared at the thin hospital blanket covering her legs. POA. They'd made Trina her legal decision-maker. When? How? Her breath caught. Not from panic, something colder. A slow-rolling dread laced with insult. The nurse shifted. "Also, this came in with the day shift. Your phone. It was misplaced during triage, but we found it in a backup drawer." She placed the familiar device in Evelyn's palm like a relic, its screen already dimming from lack of use. Evelyn turned it over, her thumb sliding the power button. The screen flickered to life. 37 notifications. No missed calls from Kyle, no texts, just junk mail, a pharmacy alert, and an auto-synced calendar reminder. "Will prep, final review." Her chest clenched, not physically, but somewhere deeper, in that place where betrayal lives quiet. She tapped open her Facebook app, fingers trembling slightly. The Wi-Fi connected slowly, bars blinking. Then the screen populated, and her blood ran cold. There it was. A post from Kyle's account shared from Trina's. "Rest easy, Evelyn Harper, 1956, 2023. A slideshow rolled across her screen. Childhood photos, her wedding day, a shot of her holding Kyle as a baby. Each image dulled with a filter and set to soft piano music. The post had been live for 2 days. 2 days of strangers mourning her while she still breathed. 2 days of silence from the people who claimed to love her. Her mouth went dry. She looked over at the bouquet, pristine and cruel in its display. So that was it. To them, she was already gone. She stared at her phone, breath shallow, and scrolled through comments. Condolences, sad faces, someone posted a poem. Her niece Chloe wrote, "I can't believe she's really gone. Love you always, Aunt Evie." The air in the room felt thinner now, dense with insult. Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they weren't full of tears. They were sharp. She sat up straighter, opened her laptop browser and typed in Facebook again, this time to leave a comment beneath her own digital eulogy. "Very much alive. Don't plan on dying this week." The video started with a slow piano song and ended with my birth year and no end date. Evelyn stared at her phone like it might burn her fingertips. The battery hovered at 12%, but she couldn't stop scrolling. The Rest Easy Evelyn Harper post had over 1,000 likes and 247 comments. She tapped the video, sound muted at first. A black screen faded into a sepia-toned slideshow. The first image, her graduation portrait, 18, wide-eyed, lips curved in a nervous smile. A gentle piano melody trickled in. The photos dissolved one into the next. Her wedding day with David, wind in her veil, a snapshot of her holding Kyle as a newborn, a thigh, Thanksgiving table full of laughter. Each frame more washed out than the last, like her life had been processed through a mourning filter. Then came the final image, a lit candle against a black background. Underneath it, Evelyn Harper, 1956. The dash lingered. The end year left blank, as if to suggest her spirit hadn't quite finished leaving. Her thumb hovered, frozen mid-scroll. The sound of a heart monitor thumped steadily in the background, oddly in rhythm with the music. She clicked to expand the comments. There they were, dozens of people she hadn't seen in years, grieving a woman who hadn't died. So sorry to hear, she was a true light. Can't believe she's gone. Bless her soul. Heaven just got another angel. A familiar name stopped her cold. Chloe Dawson. Her niece. Aunt Evie. I don't know how to say goodbye. I just wish I could have told you how much you meant to me. You deserved better. Evelyn felt her chest constrict, not with pain, but something harder. Something more permanent than the weakness that had landed her in the ICU. She hit the call button for Kyle, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Again. Nothing. It wasn't until she clicked into Trina's Instagram account that the full absurdity of it landed. Trina's new bio read, "Widowed Spirit, Resting Hearts." Beneath it, a series of moody selfies, eyes swollen from either tears or allergies, accompanied by captions like, "Grief comes in waves," and "Some losses can't be explained, only survived." "I'm not dead," Evelyn whispered aloud. Her nurse turned sharply from the medication tray. "Mrs. Harper?" Evelyn's hands were trembling now. Her heart monitor began spiking erratically. The nurse rushed to her side, adjusting the IV line. "Let's just breathe for a second. Can I get you some water?" "They're pretending I'm gone," Evelyn said flatly. "I'm reading my own eulogy in real time." The nurse blinked, then gently lowered the back of Evelyn's bed and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Try not to let your pressure climb too high. You're still recovering." "Apparently I've already recovered from life," Evelyn snapped, before softening. "Sorry, I need a moment." The nurse nodded. "I'll be right outside if you need me." Once alone again, Evelyn opened the comment field on the tribute post. Her fingers hovered, knuckles stiff from years of arthritis but steady with purpose now. She began to type, one slow word after another, like chiseling into a marble gravestone, but in reverse. "To everyone mourning me, don't waste your candles. Very much alive. Don't plan on dying this week." She tapped post. There was no thunderclap, no dramatic gasp from the walls of the ICU, just the tiny hollow sound of her thumb tapping glass. But Evelyn felt it. Not as revenge. Not yet. As resurrection. The comment sat beneath the video for exactly 20 seconds before the likes started to disappear. They buried me online, so I checked myself into a recovery spa to haunt them in peace. Evelyn pressed the pen to the clipboard, her signature steady despite the IV bandage still fresh on her wrist. Against medical advice, the form read, "Patient understands risks of leaving early." She didn't just understand them, she welcomed them. Anything truly was safer than staying still while your family hosted your digital funeral like a slideshow for the bored and privileged. She walked out of the hospital at 7:16 a.m. with a plastic bag of prescriptions and no ride scheduled. At 7:18, a black sedan pulled up. The driver's window rolled down. Rita Harper, younger by 10 years but aged by law school and courtroom wars, leaned across the console with her usual fire. "You better have a damn good reason for walking out like a movie villain." Evelyn slipped into the seat, closed the door with the gentleness of someone placing a lid on an urn. They told the world I'm gone. Let them believe it a little longer. Rita's jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. She drove. The spa was nestled 2 towns away in the High Pines, Seraphim Glen, a holistic women's retreat with no televisions, no co-ed anything, and no guests under 50. Evelyn checked in under the name Ann Dale, an alias she'd once used for her library card when the real one lapsed and she didn't want late fees catching up to her. Inside, the spa smelled like citrus and lavender. Rainwater trickled over stones in a meditation fountain. Her suite was quiet, save for birdsong and the faint hum of soft jazz playing somewhere distant. It was the kind of place people went to recover from heartbreak or hysterectomies. Evelyn unpacked only 2 things: a week's worth of cotton pajamas and a prepaid burner phone she'd tucked inside her shoe bag. She kept it powered off in the drawer beneath the teakwood nightstand, wrapped in a floral scarf. When she finally powered it on that evening, it buzzed with saved screenshots. Trina's Facebook post had been edited, then deleted. Kyle's page was now locked to friends only. But Evelyn had everything archived. The post, the comments, even Trina's blog draft. Letting go gracefully, losing a parent while raising a child. No visits to her bedside, no calls, just content. She began sorting the screenshots into folders. One labeled Digital Obituary, another labeled Asset Clues. She scrolled through the list of people who had reshared the original post. Friends from high school, a few from her book club, even the woman who used to do her nails every Thursday. Rita visited every 2 days, dropping off real books and quiet gossip. "They think you're in a medically induced coma," she said once. "Trina made it sound noble, said you wouldn't want people to see you like that." "I don't," Evelyn replied, sipping herbal tea on the porch, "but I'd rather not be embalmed while still blinking." That night, she lay on the cool linen sheets, the burner phone pressed to her chest. A part of her, maybe the more exhausted part, hoped they'd panic and come clean. Maybe Kyle would show up at the hospital and realize his mistake. Maybe he'd remember who raised him, who braided his hair when he still wore it long, who paid his first semester's tuition without asking for anything in return. But no one had come. Until the phone rang. Blocked number. Evelyn almost didn't answer, but her finger moved before her hesitation could stop it. "Hello?" Silence. Then a familiar voice, ragged and trembling. "Aunt Evie? It's Chloe. Are you okay?" Evelyn sat up in bed. "I am now. I didn't know if I should call, but I just..." Chloe's voice cracked. "Did you know they already had your will notarized?" Evelyn gripped the phone tighter, her eyes narrowing in the dark. "They what?" "The lawyer said my estate transition was smooth. Only problem? I'm still breathing." The man on the phone had a warm, easy voice. Too smooth, Evelyn thought. Like someone accustomed to condolences and contracts. He introduced himself as Victor Langley, estate attorney for the Harper family. He had no idea he was speaking to the woman whose property transfer documents he'd helped process last week. "I just wanted to extend my condolences again, ma'am," he said, mistaking Evelyn for her sister, Rita. It was an honor helping make Evelyn's wishes a reality. Everything was so seamless, quite rare for an estate transition of this size. Evelyn's hand gripped the burner phone so tightly the plastic casing creaked. "Right," Rita replied calmly, playing along. "And by seamless, you mean?" "Well, her power of attorney had already been activated before the cardiac event," Victor said cheerfully. "So there was no delay. Mrs. Trina Harper handled everything swiftly. She said Evelyn had no other immediate family." Rita paused just long enough to let the lie hang there like a thread waiting to snap. "No next of kin," Rita repeated coolly. "I see." Evelyn, sitting beside her on the spa patio, could hear the conversation clearly through the speakerphone. Her stomach curled, not in surprise but confirmation. She had suspected this deep in her marrow, but hearing it spoken out loud made it feel like an obituary being read at the wrong funeral. Once Victor ended the call, Rita hung up and didn't say a word. She just looked at her sister with a jaw clenched so tight, her cheekbones looked like stone. "They didn't just announce your death," Rita said finally. "They cashed it." They sat under the shade of the spa's peach trees, the sun warm and soft, at odds with the cold revelation unfurling between them. The evidence mounted quickly. Call logs showed multiple conversations between Trina and two different banks. One was Evelyn's retirement provider. A balance had been transferred. The other showed recent activity. Too recent. Rita, already a veteran in legal warfare, requested Evelyn's account reports through secure, firm channels. What came back was worse than expected. A liquidation notice for Evelyn's jewelry insurance rider, a transfer of deed request for her home's address, and a real estate listing with high-res interior photos Evelyn had never authorized. "I haven't even seen those rooms in months," Evelyn whispered, looking at the listing on Rita's iPad. "They're showing it like I'm some stranger who already left." In one of the photos, the living room looked stripped. No framed memories, no books, a candle on the mantel, a bowl of artificial lemons on the coffee table. Neutral, staged, empty. Evelyn pressed her fingertips together, inhaling slowly. Her voice, when she spoke, was measured. "I'm not angry." Rita raised an eyebrow. "You're not?" "No," Evelyn said, her lips curving into something faintly dangerous. "I'm just finally ready to correct a few errors. Not revenge, not rage, just precision." That night, Evelyn started drawing a map in her journal, circles around names, arrows connecting timelines, a soft blueprint forming beneath her pen. She didn't know what the ending would be yet, but she knew this: she would write it herself. The next morning, she sipped chamomile tea in the garden, watching finches dart through the rosemary branches. A rare moment of peace. Then the front desk rang her suite. "Ms. Dale?" the receptionist said, using Evelyn's spa alias. "Yes? There's a young woman here who just checked in under your name. Said she's your niece." Chloe Harper Evelyn sat forward, eyes narrowing. "She's here?" "Yes, ma'am. She booked a full session and requested you join her when you're ready." Evelyn stared out the window as the sun flickered through the trees. Something shifted in her chest. Curiosity laced with suspicion. She stood slowly and murmured to herself, "Let's see what they've sent her to say." Chloe couldn't meet my eyes. She whispered, "They closed the sale last Friday." The lavender essential oils still lingered in the air as Evelyn stepped barefoot into the quiet tea lounge at the spa. Soft chimes played from hidden speakers overhead. A tray of lemon-infused water glinted in the sunlight streaming through gauzy white curtains. Across the table sat Chloe, her niece, shoulders hunched, eyes rimmed with worry. She looked smaller than Evelyn remembered, though perhaps it was the weight of truth she carried now. Chloe didn't speak right away. She fidgeted with the corner of a paper napkin, folding and unfolding it until it resembled nothing at all. Evelyn waited, hands folded, eyes calm. "I didn't know," Chloe said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Not until it was too late." Evelyn tilted her head. "Didn't know what, sweetheart?" Chloe looked down. "They sold it. The house. They closed the sale last Friday." A silence fell so sharp it could have sliced porcelain. Evelyn blinked once. That was all. "They sold my home," she said, the words not rising in anger, but laying heavy like lead. Chloe nodded. "Kyle used a proxy company. Trina had a friend from her old job. They listed it under a different LLC, all while your name was still technically in transition." That's how the realtor phrased it. Evelyn's hand moved slowly to her teacup. The porcelain was warm, steadying. She took a sip. It tasted like mint and betrayal. "And my things?" she asked, voice even. Chloe looked ill. "Some of it was sent to a storage unit. The rest—" She hesitated. "Trina made an Instagram post. Said they were cleansing inherited spaces for fresh energy. There were pictures of your kitchen chairs out on the curb." Evelyn set her cup down gently, not a single crack in her expression. "I see. I thought they were just making arrangements," Chloe said quickly. "Kyle told me the doctors said there was no coming back, that the POA gave them the right to prepare." Evelyn looked out the window. In the garden beyond, bees hovered above rose blooms and sunbeams painted golden streaks on the grass. "I'm not angry with you, Chloe," she said softly. Chloe's eyes welled up. "Then what are you?" Evelyn turned back to her. Her gaze wasn't soft anymore. It was steel wrapped in silk. Awake. That afternoon, she asked Chloe to go home. No dramatic speeches, no revenge vows, just a simple hug, a brush of her hand across Chloe's shoulder, and a thank you for telling her the truth. But Evelyn didn't cry. Not when she stepped back into her suite, not when she opened her journal. She walked barefoot onto the small stone balcony instead, let the air wash over her, and breathed deeply as if she could inhale back the pieces of herself they'd tried to scatter. Then she sat down, lit a single white candle, and wrote, "They treated me like I was already gone, so let me show them what resurrection looks like." She underlined the last sentence 3 times. The sun dipped behind the trees as she closed her journal, her fingers firm on the cover. Her body still ached, her heart occasionally misfired, but her mind had never felt sharper. They had declared her dead. Now they would learn the price of assuming a heartbeat was optional. That evening she found Rita reading legal briefs by the spa's koi pond, glasses perched low on her nose. Evelyn sat beside her in silence for a few long moments, the sky bruised violet behind them. Then, without preamble, she asked the question as calmly as one might order tea. "Can you rewrite a will?" Rita didn't even look up. She just smiled, slow and wide. "Thought you'd never ask." Evelyn stood, stretched her spine, and whispered to the wind, "Let the living sort their dead. I've got work to do. I didn't fake my death, but I did accept the gift of invisibility." The spa had no clocks, no TVs, no place to be except exactly where you were. But Evelyn Harper had found her rhythm in the quiet corners, the ones where time folded softly around her and didn't ask questions. The warm stone floor cooled her bare feet as she padded through the meditation corridor, her burner phone wrapped inside a shawl against her hip. No one noticed. No one looked twice. Here, Evelyn was simply Miss Elva, a retired teacher from Illinois, quiet, harmless, and varying. But in truth, Evelyn was writing herself back into the story they tried to erase her from. In the small guest library, she sat before the spa's shared computer. A delicate white flower sat in a bud vase beside the monitor. Her reflection in the black screen was soft, but her eyes were sharpened to a new edge. She pulled up a document, her maiden name newly attached to a brand new trust. Rita's law firm had filed it that morning, carefully removing every known tie to her son, his wife, and their deceit. Every account under Evelyn Harper had been frozen. The new name, Elva Mae Sanderson, now held her legal power. She typed slowly, rhythmically. Her fingers didn't shake this time. "Restless spirit, entry number 1. They buried me on a lie. I'm writing back from the grave." Evelyn launched her blog under that name, Restless Spirit. At first it was just a quiet place to scream into the void. She didn't include names, not yet, just stories. Cold, brutal stories from a woman who'd been erased before she'd even died. Each post was detailed, bitterly funny, painfully clear. About medical neglect, financial fraud, POA abuse. But Evelyn wasn't just venting. She was tracing, mapping, untangling the thread of every signature and transaction Rita's team uncovered. Each time they sent her proof, credit pulls, estate evaluations, inadvertent wire transfers, Evelyn added a chapter. By the end of the week, the blog had quietly found traction. Comments began to appear. "My aunt's daughter did this exact thing. She didn't find out until hospice. This is terrifying. Thank you for speaking up. Restless, spirit, are you me? Because this just happened in my family." The anonymity gave her more than safety. It gave her reach. Each post was composed in the same sunlit alcove, with rosemary tea steeping beside her and classical music humming faintly through ceiling speakers. No one at the spa asked what she was writing, and Evelyn didn't offer. Rita popped by for a check-in on Thursday, slid a USB drive across the table while they pretended to discuss knitting patterns. "Full audit trail," Rita said under her breath. "Every login, every withdrawal." Evelyn smiled. "They thought invisibility made me powerless. It just made me harder to trace." That night, Evelyn lit a candle by the balcony. She opened a new draft. Restless Spirit, entry number 6. My son's wife told the lawyer I had no immediate next of kin. She should have told the truth. She had no idea who I really was. Then she clicked post. The next morning, Evelyn sat across from a clay mask facialist, eyes closed, her thoughts floating somewhere between grief and satisfaction, when the spa's receptionist appeared with a tablet in hand. "Miss Elva," she said gently, "someone reposted your blog link." Evelyn opened one eye. "It's trending on a company HR forum, Kyle's company." Evelyn smiled faintly, the clay mask cracking at her cheeks. "Well," she murmured, "it seems the dead have excellent Wi-Fi. They lit candles in my name, now their inboxes were on fire." The storm didn't roll in loud, it shimmered, subtle and seismic. At first, Evelyn thought the notification buzz was just a system hiccup, but when the spa's Wi-Fi glitched 3 times in under an hour, and the receptionist wandered into the tea lounge with her phone held like it was smoking, she knew something had shifted. "Miss Elva," the young woman said, tilting the screen toward her, "isn't this your blog?" The headline floated across the spa's softly lit interior like a ghost. "She's not dead. She's just watching one woman's account of inheritance, fraud gone viral." The repost from Kyle's corporate HR forum had ignited a wildfire, and someone had turned her latest post, Restless Spirit, entry number 6, into a screen-grabbed meme. Her words danced across it in stark white font. "I didn't die, but I saw who mourned for the money and who mourned for me." By sunset, Evelyn's private corner of the internet was no longer private. Comments flooded in, some shocked, some angry, some eerily familiar. "How is this even legal? Wait, wasn't this lady pronounced dead last week? Trina is my sister-in-law. If this is about her, oof, the woman from the tribute post, I thought she was gone?" But it was Evelyn's own comment that sent everything into chaos. Under Trina's now deleted Instagram reel, Evelyn, after days of watching in silence, had left one line: "Very much alive, just not where you left me." Within hours, it had been shared 15,000 times. Kyle's company issued a brief, uncomfortable statement acknowledging an internal ethics investigation regarding misrepresentation of personal matters involving an employee's family. Trina, ever the strategist, began deleting Instagram posts, LinkedIn updates, even her widowed spirit bio. She uploaded a teary-eyed selfie with the caption, "I never meant harm. I was grieving too soon." But her apology was 3 clicks too late. People had screenshots. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat cross-legged in the spa's bamboo meditation dome, her phone resting in her lap like a quiet conspirator. She wasn't angry anymore, not in the loud way. What she felt now was sharper, cleaner, a strange peace wrapped in clarity. Her burner buzzed relentlessly. 34 messages, 12 missed calls, 1 voicemail from her cousin in Tulsa sobbing into the receiver. Even her ex-husband's sister wrote, "Please tell me this isn't real. I never got to say goodbye." Evelyn didn't reply to any of them. She sipped ginger tea, listened to wind chimes dance outside, meditated on a single truth. When people show you their grief, sometimes it's not for you. It's for what they're losing. And she wasn't going to comfort people mourning a version of her they helped erase. That night, she walked to the edge of the spa property, where moonlight touched the edge of the koi pond. Frogs croaked in lazy harmony. Evelyn let her toes sink into the soft earth and tilted her head to the stars. From the shadows, Rita appeared with a smirk and a USB drive. "You broke the internet, you know." "I barely nudged it," Evelyn said with a dry smile. The truth did the rest. They sat together on a stone bench. No need for words now, just the satisfaction of watching fiction collapse under fact. The next morning, a message pinged in Evelyn's inbox. Subject line, "Confidential media inquiry, feature request." Body, "We've read your blog. We'd like to tell your story. Are you ready to be seen?" If I was a ghost, I might as well haunt the living. The microphone clicked on, and Evelyn drew a slow, deliberate breath. "Ready when you are," said the producer, voice soft through the headset. Evelyn nodded, though no one could see her, seated in the quiet warmth of a soundproof recording room rented by her niece Chloe. The space smelled faintly of vanilla and vinyl, and the only light came from a salt lamp glowing on the far desk, gentle, like dawn pressed through amber. She leaned in close. "They buried me with a slideshow," she said calmly. "Problem is, I was still alive." A brief silence. Then the journalist's voice, smooth, neutral, practiced. "Can you walk us through that moment, when you realized your family had already mourned you publicly?" Evelyn's lips twitched in a ghost of a smile. "They posted candles and piano music before I could even swallow ice chips. My son's wife changed her Instagram bio to widowed spirit. And when I finally got my phone back in ICU, I found myself eulogized by strangers." The journalist didn't speak for several beats. The silence was its own kind of reverence. The interview went on for an hour. Evelyn described the tribute video, the condolence comments, the faked signatures. She spoke plainly, without venom, but every word carried weight like a gavel. Her voice didn't shake, not when she detailed the forged power of attorney, not when she described her house being sold before she even left her hospital bed, and not when she revealed she'd watched it all unfold from a recovery spa, sipping tea while reading posts about her graceful passing. The episode, titled Inheritance Theft Burying the Living, launched 2 weeks later. It didn't name her. The production kept all names redacted, voices distorted, timelines blurred. But those who needed to recognize the voice did. One such person was Kyle. He was at his desk when the podcast began playing over a coworker's speakerphone. He didn't notice at first, until the voice cracked slightly at the word mother, and the silence in the office turned concrete. "That sounds like," someone started, then didn't finish. Kyle's hand trembled as he gripped his coffee cup, the ceramic edge clinking too loud against his teeth. Across town, Trina's boutique lost 3 sponsorships within 24 hours of the episode going viral. Her name trended on local Twitter for the wrong reasons. Someone dug up her rest in peace post, screenshotted and recirculated with the caption, "When grief is branding." Evelyn, meanwhile, remained unnamed, untagged, unseen, publicly. Her identity, like a well-cut silhouette, hovered in the space between confession and consequence. Privately, however, she made one exception. From the spa's shared computer, under a burner email, she sent the full audio file to Kyle. No subject line, no note, just the sound of her voice, untouched by static or doubt. The file's title, "In Case You Ever Wondered What I Sound Like Alive." 3 days passed. Then a voice note arrived on her burner phone. The message was only 12 seconds long, but every syllable crawled. "I'm begging. Just talk to me once. Just, please, say something." She didn't press play again. Instead, she looked out the window of the spa's meditation dome. A single leaf fell from a tree, spiraling like time. Evelyn watched it land without fanfare, without fuss. That night she journaled under moonlight. The truth doesn't always punish. Sometimes it just shows people their own reflection. The next morning, another message appeared, this time from Rita. The hospital DNR form finally came in. "Evelyn, you need to see who signed it. The man who didn't visit me in ICU was now crying on voicemail." The burner phone buzzed in Evelyn's robe pocket as she stirred honey into her chamomile tea. She didn't answer it, not immediately. Instead, she carried her mug to the meditation lounge of the spa, where the walls were curved like a cocoon, and the windows looked out over a pine-dotted hillside slowly shifting into dusk. The scent of lavender oil drifted from a nearby diffuser, and outside, a wind chime responded gently to the breeze. Only once she sat on the floor cushion did she press play. Kyle's voice came through like gravel scraped over regret. "Mom, I don't even know where to begin," he said, barely holding the shape of the words. "Trina's gone, staying with her sister or something. I think she's blaming me. Work put me on unpaid leave. They said it's about reputation concerns, not proof, but you know what they mean." He paused. Then came the sound of breath hitching, the quiet kind of crying, the kind men do when they don't want to be heard but desperately need to be. I didn't think you'd see it. I didn't think it mattered anymore. Please, just call me back, please." Evelyn let the voicemail finish. Then she hit play again. this time on speaker. She set the phone on the bamboo bench across from her and let the words echo through the empty space. Not out of cruelty, but completion. A funeral of his own making. Afterward, she lifted the phone, opened her recording app, and began speaking in the same calm tone she had used with the podcast producer. "You mourned me while I was still alive, Kyle," she said. "Let's not reverse that again." She didn't send the message, not yet, but she saved it. Labeled the file. Closure Draft 1. That evening, Chloe called again. "I need to see you," she said, her voice shaking more than Evelyn expected. "Please, in person, just once." Evelyn closed her eyes. 1 hour, she said. Tea house near the springs. No photos, no pleas. The next day, Evelyn arrived first. She wore all white, crisp linen trousers, a flowing tunic, a silk scarf at her neck. She wasn't trying to make a statement. She just didn't want to blend in. The tea house was quiet, warm, filled with amber lighting and the gentle murmur of a trickling wall fountain. Chloe entered a few minutes later, clutching a manila envelope. Her eyes were rimmed red but steady. "You look," she began. "Alive?" Evelyn offered. Not unkindly. Chloe gave a broken laugh. "Beautiful," she said. "Stronger than I deserve to sit across from." They ordered jasmine tea. No pastries. Chloe didn't open the envelope at first. She told Evelyn about the fallout, Trina's desperate spin control, Kyle's collapse. The disbelief from friends who had mourned Evelyn only to learn she was walking among them again, untouched by death and twice as deliberate. Then, Chloe slid the envelope forward. "It's not just the house," she said, voice soft but loaded. "There's something else, something you need to see." Evelyn slowly peeled back the flap of the envelope and froze as the top document came into view. Her name, misspelled. A DNR form. The signature line bore a name it never should have. Kyle's. The hospital document said, "Do not resuscitate." My name was spelled wrong, but my son signed it. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she pulled the document from the envelope Chloe had placed on the tea house table. The air in the room felt suddenly too still, like it was holding its breath alongside her. Her name sat at the top of the page, but not as she would have written it. Evelyn Harper. The spelling off just enough to bypass scrutiny if no one looked closely. But what stopped her heart, what chilled her more than any misspelling, was the signature scrawled at the bottom. Kyle Harper. The date listed was the night of her admittance, the very night she'd been wheeled in, unconscious, heart in failure. Do not resuscitate was checked twice, in 2 separate sections, in uneven handwriting that didn't match hers at all. "I found it in the cloud portal when I logged into your old hospital records," Chloe said softly, her voice cautious, like stepping barefoot through glass. "They must have uploaded it before you even regained consciousness." Evelyn stared at the form. Trina had signed as the verbal confirmation witness. A heavy buzzing grew in her ears, though she wasn't sure if it came from within her body or from the tiny sound system tucked behind the tea counter, where lo-fi piano music played with haunting slowness. I'm sorry," Chloe said. "I wasn't sure if I should show you." "No," Evelyn replied, voice flat, unshaken. "You were right to." But she didn't stay long enough for tea refills. With the envelope pressed like a brick against her chest, Evelyn rose from her seat. Chloe tried to speak again, but Evelyn just held up a hand. Not harsh, just final. Her eyes were dry, her mouth set. She left the tea house without another word. Outside, the breeze was salty with distant ocean wind, the trees bending like they knew something she didn't. Evelyn walked past the spa's welcome gate, across the gravel circle, and toward her room. She moved slowly, with purpose, the way someone moves when they've already buried something in their mind and are now covering the dirt back up. In her room, she sat on the bed. The document lay open beside her. Her breath came evenly, methodically, but her pulse thudded behind her ears. When Rita picked up the call, Evelyn didn't waste time. "They submitted a forged DNR," she said. "My name spelled wrong. Kyle signed it." There was a beat of silence, and then Rita's voice came through like the clang of a gavel. "That's felony-level medical fraud, Attempted endangerment, maybe more. We can open a case immediately." Evelyn didn't answer right away. She stared at the document again, as if the ink itself might confess something else. "Evelyn?" Rita prompted. "I need a flight," she said instead. "Book me to San Rafael, the coastal retreat you mentioned last year. I'll be in touch once I've arrived." She packed slowly, methodically. She left her burner phone behind in the room, along with her white robe and the teacup with yesterday's dried lemon ring still clinging to the porcelain. At the airport, Evelyn sat by the window near Gate 11, wrapped in a navy shawl, sipping espresso from a paper cup. She didn't read a book. She didn't scroll her phone. She just watched the tarmac, the stillness of the concrete broken occasionally by the slow ballet of planes taxiing into place. And then she opened her new phone's camera app. She angled it carefully, facing out toward the sunlit runway, a sliver of her scarf, her hand holding the ticket visible in the frame. She typed a caption under the photo and hit post. Alive, still deciding what to do about it. Somewhere in the city, Kyle's phone buzzed. Trina looked up from her wine glass and said, "What did she just post?" "They wanted my death to fund their life. I chose to fund someone else's." The pen felt heavier in her hand than it should have, not in weight, but in meaning. Evelyn sat at Rita's long mahogany desk, sun pouring in from the window behind her, turning the freshly printed pages in front of her to gold-edged declarations of defiance. She signed her name slowly, each curve of the E deliberate, final. She had signed many things in her life, marriage licenses, birth certificates, condolence cards, but never had her name carried this much resurrection. "I've never enjoyed paperwork," she muttered, "but this feels like art." Rita chuckled, low and proud. "You didn't just survive, Eve. You rewrote your story." Evelyn's eyes remained on the last page, her voice a thread above silence. "And I wrote them out of it." The new will was brief, brutally elegant. All previous versions were revoked, all assets, trusts, holdings, stripped from Kyle and Trina's inheritance. Instead, the document named only one family member, Chloe. Not for loyalty alone, but for courage, for truth. Evelyn had left her the beach cottage in Mendocino, the one Kyle always dismissed as too remote. It would suit someone who still knew how to be present. But most of the estate wasn't going to family at all. She was donating a large portion to an elder abuse advocacy foundation, one that trained healthcare professionals and offered legal resources to older adults with no support system. It would be named after her mother, who died in a nursing home Evelyn could never afford to change. Now, she could make sure someone else's mother didn't vanish into silence. The rest? A grant. Quiet. Substantial. For ICU survivors like her, those discharged into a world that barely remembered they existed, especially women, especially alone. "You're sure about publishing your blog under your name now?" Rita asked. "You're stepping out of the shadows." Evelyn smiled. What good is a voice if no one knows who survived to use it? That afternoon, she uploaded her final post under Restless Spirit, no longer anonymous. The title read, "This is the face of the woman you buried too soon." A photo followed. No filters, just Evelyn Harper, seated at a sunlit bench, hands folded, alive. The piece traced her journey, from her hospital bed to the spa, from silence to summons. By the end, readers weren't weeping. They were furious, inspired, ready. It took less than 48 hours. Trina received the first legal envelope at her co-working space, a clean white packet marked with the courthouse seal. She peeled it open beside a colleague, only to find Evelyn's affidavit printed inside. Misuse of power of attorney, asset liquidation under false pretenses, medical endangerment. At the same time, across town, Kyle stood in his apartment doorway in socks, holding his own envelope like it might burn through his palm. It did, in its own way. Evelyn didn't post about the summonses. She didn't need to. She simply brewed a pot of tea, let the silence of her new home settle around her like a familiar coat, and pressed play on her favorite Ella Fitzgerald record. Strings filled the air, waltzing, unwavering. She poured herself a cup. No shaking, no bitterness, only peace, and a reckoning long overdue. The doorbell rang. Rita peeked out the window and grinned. "You might want to come see this?" she said. "It's a process server, and he's got 2 more envelopes." I didn't raise my voice. The judge raised her eyebrow, and that was enough. The courtroom was cold, not just from the aggressive air conditioning but from the collective discomfort humming through the benches. Evelyn Harper stepped through the double doors not like a woman seeking revenge, but like one reclaiming her name. She wore gray slacks, a pearl-button blouse, and the same navy heels she had worn to her husband's funeral 22 years ago. Her cane clicked softly with each step. Rita walked beside her in a tailored suit, expression unreadable, briefcase in hand. The prosecutor nodded once in greeting. Evelyn didn't nod back. She didn't come to greet, only to testify. On the other side of the aisle sat Kyle, pale and restless, fingers wringing a tissue until it split into threads. Trina sat stiffly beside him, in all black, unapologetically theatrical. Her lipstick was too dark, her voice too rehearsed. Evelyn didn't look at them directly. They had already had her attention once. This was not that time. The judge, a woman in her 50s with silver at her temples and a penchant for brutal precision, adjusted her glasses and opened the hearing. Case number 13-1247, Harper v. Harper and Wilkes. Allegations include unauthorized use of durable power of attorney, estate misrepresentation, and falsified medical documentation. Evelyn took the stand with no hesitation. The courtroom quieted as she unfolded the truth, sentence by sentence, like peeling gauze from a wound. She never cried, never cracked. Her voice was clear, slow, unwavering. She described waking up to find herself digitally buried, her property sold, her name used like a signature on someone else's lies. The courtroom absorbed every word. "I did not give permission to be signed away," she said, eyes fixed on the judge. "And I certainly did not authorize a DNR filed with my name spelled wrong." When Kyle spoke, his voice wobbled with nervous penance. I thought we were doing what she would have wanted." There was confusion, and Trina, she handled most of it. Trina, smooth and sharp, leaned in. "Your Honor, I was overwhelmed. It was a time of crisis. We were grieving in advance, preemptively, emotionally." The judge blinked, unimpressed. "Preemptive grief does not authorize financial fraud, Miss Wilkes." A ripple of laughter ran through the back benches. The judge didn't smile. She only flipped to the next page in the packet. When the ruling came, it was clean and firm. Kyle and Trina were ordered to pay restitution to Evelyn, including full reimbursement for estate disbursements, liquidated assets, and legal fees. Their actions were entered into public record. A note was added to both their financial histories for fraud investigation review. Evelyn's original power of attorney was ruled invalid due to misuse, and her amended will and trust were officially recognized. She didn't look at them as she stepped down from the witness stand. She didn't speak to them as she passed their table. But the moment her heel touched the courtroom floor again, her posture seemed to shift, lighter, taller, final. Outside, Evelyn paused in the sunlight, letting it warm the back of her neck. The courthouse steps felt less like an exit and more like a stage curtain falling. "I expected more drama," Rita said beside her. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Court isn't for drama, it's for documentation." They walked away together, side by side. Evelyn didn't look back. That evening, as Evelyn slipped off her earrings in her suite at the spa, her phone buzzed. A text from the front desk receptionist blinked on the screen. "Someone just dropped off a box at the gate. No name. Should we open it?" Inside the box weren't apologies, just ashes of what they tried to erase. The box was light, lighter than it should have been. It sat at the gate of the spa like a lost dog, unlabeled, unsummoned, unannounced. The receptionist had found it that morning tucked beside the stone mailbox. No return address, no postage, just brown cardboard, sealed with cheap packing tape and a sense of finality. Evelyn didn't open it right away. She carried it to her room with both hands, cradling it like something fragile or cursed. Her fingers trembled at the edges as she peeled the tape back with the blade of a room key. The first thing that hit her wasn't the sight. It was the smell, old paper, character, smoke that clung to memory like regret. She parted the top flaps and stared down into what was once sacred, folded pages, half-crumpled, burnt corners curling like petals, envelopes still faintly bearing her name in her late husband's handwriting. No mistaking it. These were his letters. Letters he'd written to her across deployments, birthdays, the in-between years when they barely had time to say more than "love you" on a note taped to the fridge. She knew every curve of his cursive, every scratch-out and smudge. And now, some were rimmed with ash, others tinged with a wine stain, as if they'd been ruined mid-toast. On top of the heap lay a single yellow post-it. Didn't know these mattered. Sorry. The air in the room shifted. Her spine stiffened against the chair, her lungs filled, held, froze. She hadn't cried in weeks. Not through the fake obituary, not through the stolen house, not even through the forged DNR that had nearly ended her life. But this? This was theft on a different scale. This was memory arson. Her fingers hovered over a charred corner. One word remained clear on the first letter. Still. That was enough. She knew what the rest had once said. She didn't scream, didn't throw the box. She carried it, wordless, back down the path to the trees behind the spa, an unmarked space she had begun calling her grove. There, beneath the tallest oak, she crouched. Her knees creaked, but she didn't falter. She dug with her bare hands, fingernails packed with earth. No speeches, no ceremonial goodbye, just her grief, the crushed leaves underfoot, and the quiet sound of restoration as she laid the letters to rest. An hour later, Chloe knocked softly on her door. Eyes red, breath shallow. "I told him they weren't his to touch," she said, standing just past the threshold like a child facing a principal. Evelyn nodded but said nothing. Her silence was not forgiveness, nor rage. It was a full stop. Chloe stepped further in. "He wanted to erase the parts of you that didn't include him, that didn't serve him. He said the past was dangerous." Evelyn looked at her, the girl who had mourned her prematurely, then sobbed at her resurrection. "Chloe," she said gently, "I appreciate what you've tried to do, but you are no longer the bridge between us. If I want to speak to your uncle, I won't." Chloe's shoulders sagged. "I understand." Evelyn reached for a small velvet box from the nightstand and handed it to her. "Your mother gave this to me on my wedding day. You were meant to have it one day." Inside, a gold chain held a locket. When Chloe opened it, two faces smiled back. Evelyn, young and windblown, and her husband in uniform. "Don't forget us," Evelyn said, "but don't carry us for anyone else's guilt either." Chloe wiped her eyes and left without another word. That night, Evelyn sat alone under the stars, sipping lavender tea from a chipped mug. The air was colder than usual, laced with pine and the far-off hush of the ocean. Somewhere inside the spa, someone was playing cello on the communal speakers. She looked up. It had taken months, but finally, she felt clean of them. Not bitter, not victorious, just whole. The knock came at dawn. She had been journaling again, seated in the greenhouse, sun just cracking the horizon. Barefoot, in a robe, hair still damp from the early steam room. A young woman stood at the entrance, early 30s, calm, inquisitive eyes, holding a clipboard and a press badge folded discreetly in her jacket pocket. "Hi," she said, voice soft but certain. "Are you the woman from the podcast?" Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She set her journal aside and sipped her tea again, eyes locked on the stranger. Then, slowly, she stood. Evelyn smiles faintly and says, "Let's talk, but not for their sake, only for the ones still breathing. They tried to kill my name. Now it's the first thing people remember." The ring light framed her silver hair like a halo. Evelyn sat upright in her chair, spine steady, lips brushed with soft coral pink. Behind her, a simple shelf lined with books, a candle, and a framed photo of her younger self dancing barefoot in a meadow. No filters, no makeup tricks, just clarity, just truth. The moderator introduced her with a gentle voice. Tonight's guest is the author of Restless Spirit, the viral blog that shook the conversation on elder exploitation. Please welcome Evelyn Harper. A beat of silence passed as her screen came into full view. Dozens of faces from across the globe stared back at her: nurses, caregivers, activists, survivors. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but firm, like the pull of a tide that knows its own depth. "I wasn't supposed to be here," she said, eyes steady. "Not in this chair, not in this body, and definitely not in this story." The chat lit up instantly. Evelyn continued, "Because according to my son and his wife, I died. Not metaphorically, literally. They announced it, mourned me. Even posted a tribute video with my favorite song and a candle emoji." Her lips twitched at the absurdity. "The only problem? I was still breathing, still fighting." The moderator let her speak without interruption, and Evelyn told the room, without dramatics, what it meant to wake up in a hospital room with no visitors and find a condolence bouquet from the people who claimed to love her. What it meant to log on to social media and read hundreds of strangers offering prayers over her peaceful passing. What it meant to discover her own will had already been executed while her pulse still ticked on the monitor. "They didn't just try to steal my house or my money," she said softly. "They tried to steal my narrative. They tried to bury me while I was still alive." A few attendees wiped tears on camera. One nurse held up a notepad that read, "You are the voice we needed." Evelyn's voice remained composed, steady, but the edge in it was unmistakable. Grief is powerful, but what people don't always realize is it's often not for the dead. It's for what others think they've lost: control, comfort, convenience. She ended with a sentence that hung in the digital air like gospel. "I didn't fake my death, but I did take full advantage of the silence they gave me." By the end of the session, the private chat was flooded with messages: gratitude, resonance, support, and one quiet offer from a publishing agent in New York. "Have you ever considered writing a memoir?" She didn't reply immediately, but she smiled. The next morning, her blog hit syndication. Restless Spirit was featured on 3 major elder advocacy sites and shared in a viral newsletter with the subject line, "How They Tried to Erase Her and Failed." Evelyn's inbox was filled with speaking invitations, podcast requests, even an offer to adapt her blog into a short documentary, but none of that shook her as much as the update Rita delivered mid-breakfast. "Kyle's been let go," her sister said, flipping her phone screen toward her. "The company cited public trust concerns. And Trina, well, she filed for separation last week. Apparently she says she didn't sign up for this level of exposure." Evelyn took a slow sip of her chamomile tea. "Exposure's a strange word," she murmured. "Sunlight only hurts when you've been hiding." She didn't ask for details, didn't gloat. Instead, she opened her journal and wrote just one sentence at the top of the page. "I'm not here to haunt, just to remind." Later that afternoon, she returned to the grove behind the spa. The air was heavy with jasmine and eucalyptus. She sat under the oak where her husband's half-burned letters rested in the soil. Above her, the leaves whispered in a language she didn't need to translate. She read pages from the comments on her latest post. One from a 24-year-old caregiver who said, "You reminded me that my grandmother isn't a burden, she's a map." Another from a retired judge, "Your story should be required reading in every law school." Evelyn closed the app, slipped the phone back into her pocket, and let the silence stretch around her like a warm shawl. That evening, after dinner, the receptionist knocked on her door. "There's something for you," she said, handing over a cream envelope. Evelyn opened it slowly. Inside, thick cardstock, letter-pressed gold leaf font. It was a formal invitation, signed and sealed. Keynote address invitation. Women Reclaiming Legacy Summit. We believe your voice belongs in the room. Evelyn traced the embossed logo with her thumb, looked out the window at the dusk settling beyond the grove, and whispered to herself, "Let's see what they try to take from me now." "I didn't post a tribute. I posted a receipt." The applause began before she even finished her sentence. Evelyn Harper stood center stage, a single spotlight casting soft gold across the ivory silk of her blouse. Her voice had just fallen into silence, but the weight of her words still hung in the air like thunder after lightning. "I didn't die, But something inside me did, and thank God, it was the part that used to beg for approval. The summit hall, 400 chairs deep, rose to its feet. A sea of hands clapped and stilled, then clapped again. Some people were crying, some were filming. All were watching a woman who'd once been declared dead by her own family now stand not just alive, but sovereign. The Women Reclaiming Legacy Summit had saved her keynote for last, and now it was clear why. Her story wasn't just revenge, it was resurrection. She had entered the room to polite curiosity. She was leaving it with something else entirely: proof. After the standing ovation softened, Evelyn stepped back from the podium, her hands calm at her sides. A journalist from the third row asked if she had anything else to say, something off script. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document. "I was never one for drama," she said, unfolding the page slowly. "But since I was pronounced dead without my permission, I figured I'd bring the receipts." Laughter rolled through the audience, light and real. Evelyn held up the notarized copy of her will, the new will, the one that listed Chloe as her sole familial heir, and included detailed allocations to fund elder justice work and ICU survivor grants. "I'm here today, not because I lived, but because I chose to live louder than the people who tried to erase me." Another round of applause thundered through the hall. Cameras clicked. People whispered her name like she was myth and miracle. Backstage, she declined the water bottle they offered. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. She walked over to the event coordinator quietly. "Can you make sure this is deposited into the Survivors Trust Fund before the end of today?" The woman blinked at the check amount. "You want to donate your entire speaker fee?" Evelyn smiled. What better use for money than rebuilding the kind of lives someone else tried to write off? The envelope was passed down the line like something sacred. That night, Evelyn returned to her coastal rental just after sunset. The windows faced the ocean, and the sea foam lapped against the rocks in rhythmic hushes. Her shoes stayed by the door. She padded barefoot to the kitchen, humming a melody from a lullaby she couldn't quite name. Her phone buzzed on the table. One unread message. She tapped it open. "Kyle, I still see you in my dreams." She stared at the words for a long time. They weren't angry. They weren't manipulative. Just hollow. Like they were trying to echo where guilt should have been. Evelyn set the phone down gently, pressed a finger to the screen, and held it there until the delete prompt appeared. Delete message? Yes. She didn't need to reply. The ghost of the woman he tried to grieve had already vanished. The next morning, she walked the shoreline at low tide. The air was salted and sharp, cool wind brushing through her hair. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and held a notebook in one hand, a pen tucked behind her ear. Every few steps, she paused to pick up a smooth stone or examine a bit of driftwood. She breathed deep, not to calm herself, but to memorize the feeling of being exactly where she was meant to be. At a flat, shaded spot near the dunes, she settled into a folding chair, opened her notebook. On the first page, she wrote, "Some tributes are posted too early. Others are written in ink and legacy." She stopped, then underlined legacy twice. A breeze lifted the edge of the page. Her blog had already hit national syndication. She'd received interest from 3 publishing houses and had a Zoom call scheduled with a documentary team next week, but none of it felt like a crescendo, not exactly. It felt more like closure, not the kind where things end, the kind where you stop needing anyone else to validate that they happened. At her side, the ocean stretched wide and indifferent. Evelyn looked down at her wrist, where she wore a simple beaded bracelet. It had belonged to her husband, the only thing of his she managed to save from the ash-stained box Chloe had brought weeks ago. She touched it once, then reached for her pen again. The last words she wrote that morning weren't for the blog or the keynote or her journal. They were for herself. You were never lost. They just stopped looking. And with that, she closed the notebook. Let the wind carry the rest. Some tributes are posted too early, others are written in ink and legacy.